it looks like we may get the Bitcoin trifecta in 2024. That's the spot ETF, halving, and the Fed pivot all at the same time. And if that were to happen, well, Bitcoin would likely melt our faces off. But does that mean it's time to buy right now? Well, not so fast, because we gotta explore all the arguments both for and against buying Bitcoin before coming up with our final verdict. Alright? Starting with the case for buying Bitcoin. So the first thing is, check this out. This is a chart of Bitcoin dominance. It shows us that Bitcoin is dominating altcoins right now. Usually when both BTC price and dominance are rising, that means it's Bitcoin season. Whereas if BTC price is rising, but dominance is falling, then it's altcoin season. Currently, we're in Bitcoin season, and we see most alts continue to put in new lows versus BTC. So if you were to buy alts, then you should look for some sign of reversal instead of just guessing and buying a falling knife. Anyways, my next reason to buy Bitcoin is that its network fundamentals are stronger than ever. This is a chart of the total hash rate, which is putting in new all-time highs seemingly every month. What this tells us is A, miners remain super bullish on Bitcoin despite a long bear market, and B, that the Bitcoin network remains the most secure network on Earth and someone would literally need billions of dollars in order to attack it. So yeah, strong network equals strong reason to buy, enough said. But my next reason to be bullish is that Bitcoin's on-chain metrics look spectacular. Check this out, this is a chart of the amount of Bitcoin on centralized exchanges. As you can see, there's a strong trend of Bitcoin leaving exchanges, which leaves us with a record low amount that's still on exchanges. The thesis goes that if there's not a lot of BTC on exchanges, then it doesn't take much buying in order to pump the price. But hold up. Couldn't people just send their Bitcoin back to exchanges when they want to sell? Well, yes, of course they can. But in general, Bitcoin leaving exchanges is bullish, especially when combined with our other reasons to buy. Such as my next point, which is that Bitcoin's Lightning Network is getting some real adoption. Remember, that's Bitcoin's layer 2 solution that lets us scale to become a worldwide payments network. Bitcoin itself can only process around 10 transactions per second, but Lightning ups that amount to thousands of transactions per second. So that's amazing, right? Well, a lot of people actually think that Lightning is dead because of the bear market, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The amount of routed transactions has grown over 1,000% in the past 2 years. Lightning transactions now account for 47% of Bitcoin's on-chain transactions, and it's estimated to have between 250,000 to 1.1 million monthly active users. So yeah, the Lightning Network is clearly poppin', and it's one of the few products in crypto that has any real adoption. But anyways, that's not all, because Bitcoin also has new innovation to be excited about. Historically, Bitcoin has been slow to innovate compared to other crypto projects. And that's considered a good thing, because you don't want your store of value to be changed willy-nilly. But that doesn't mean that there's no innovation going on in Bitcoin land. Recently, Lightning Labs launched Taproot Assets, which is a platform for launching stablecoins and real-world assets on both Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. Now, both stablecoins and real-world assets already have proven demand, so if Bitcoin is able to capture some of that, then of course it'd be bullish. Now, my next reason to buy is that the institutions are coming. I know, we've been saying this for the longest time, but seriously, institutions are on the verge of flooding into the space. Just check out this clip by Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, who was interviewed the day that Cointelegraph falsely claimed that their ETF was approved.
And I think there's more people running into a flight to quality, whether that is in treasuries, gold, or crypto, depending on how you think about it. And I believe crypto will play that type of role as a flight to quality.
You gotta remember, him and his Wall Street buddies hated Bitcoin and crypto a few years ago, but their views have shifted so much since then. Now they're investing in the space, building their own crypto exchanges, and praising Bitcoin in public interviews. So with all of them about to enter the space, perhaps we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to front-run them, and hence it'd be time to buy. Now, one major reason why the institutions are coming is this gosh darn ETF that's finally gonna get approved, and my goodness, would it make Bitcoin rocket. We already got a taste of the potential God candle with the Cointelegraph fake news tweet, and that's surefire proof that Bitcoin will rocket when the official approval comes. Also, just look at what the gold ETF did for gold's price. It freaking rocketed. So perhaps this ETF will do the same for Bitcoin, aka digital gold. But I want to break this down further as to why the ETF will cause Bitcoin to rocket. So before the ETF, there really wasn't a global regulated way to access BTC. And while that may not stop you and I from buying it, you got your family offices, hedge funds, and private banks, and they prefer an ETF type product to access such an asset. And so when the ETF is finally approved, those entities could bring in around $10 to $20 billion in flows, which by the way would take BTC way beyond just 30K, because it only took around $100 million to get there during the Cointelegraph pump. And remember, the order books are quite thin right now. Also, the approval of a Bitcoin ETF would do so much for its legitimacy. People will see it as Bitcoin getting regulatory acceptance, and that could make more mainstream investors amenable to buying it. Anyways, my next reason to buy is that the halving is coming in 2024, and that by itself could make Bitcoin rocket. After all, there's been 3 halvings in the past, and they all made Bitcoin rocket, right? But my argument here is more than just looking at past performance though. It's about the supply shock that the halving brings at the end of the day. Like the halving cuts miners' rewards in half, right? Which means they have less Bitcoin that they can sell in order to fund their operations. But Bitcoin also has a special source of inelastic demand, which is all the orange-pilled fanatics who buy Bitcoin every week regardless of its price, and they hodl with diamond hands. So this source of demand pretty much guarantees that the price will go up after they scoop up all the BTC from the weak-handed sellers who make up the elastic supply. But yeah, even if you don't buy this theory, perhaps all this talk about the halving is just a self-fulfilling prophecy at the end of the day. So why fight it? Now, I bet you're super bullish and itching to buy some Bitcoin right now. But hold up, because there's another way to acquire some Bitcoin besides just straight up buying it. And that's through this cool device called the Heatbit Mini. It's a heater, air purifier, and Bitcoin miner all at the same time. And just FYI, they are the sponsor of this video. But check this out, Satoshi Nakamoto actually came up with the idea of using your Bitcoin miner as a space heater. He wrote about it in one of his early forum posts, and it actually makes a ton of sense. But anyways, the Heatbit Mini uses the latest 5nm silicon chips to mine Bitcoin, which gets you around 10 terahertz per second worth of computational power. And if those numbers mean nothing to you, well, just know that it's on par with the latest industrial mining gear, but it runs at just 400 watts, which makes it ultra efficient. In terms of income, it's around $20 worth of mining rewards straight into our wallets every month. And that's in addition to the heat it emits, which is plenty to heat a 400 square foot room. This makes the Heatbit Mini a super green device, right? Because instead of using conventional heating coils, it just uses the heat that the miner generates. So it's doing double duty. As for air purification, it includes the latest and greatest HEPA air filters that's used on board the latest airplanes. And all of that runs at less than 40 decibels, which makes it quieter than your refrigerator. Now, as for pricing, you probably think that this is ultra expensive, right? Well, actually no. They have different pricing tiers from $239 to $359 to $699, depending on how much of the mining rewards you want to split with them. So yeah, if you're itching to buy one, you can order it with a 5% discount by using my link in the description or promo code COINSIDER. Anyways, back to our question of is it time to buy Bitcoin? And now let's turn to the case against it. So the first thing is that the state of the global economy is still quite worrisome right now. There's a lot of geopolitical uncertainty with 2 major wars going on. And a bunch of macro analysts are still calling for a recession to happen soon. Now, you may disagree with them, but the fact remains that things are tougher for your average consumer around the world. So with most people managing their finances tighter than before, you could imagine that buying a Bitcoin is not a high priority for them. But here's the thing, some people are like, well, if the economy becomes super bad, then it'll actually be bullish because the Federal Reserve will be forced to pivot. After all, a major reason why the bear market even started was because the Fed started raising interest rates to help fight inflation. So the thesis is that once the Fed pivots, aka starts lowering rates, then risk assets such as Bitcoin are gonna start rocketing again. Now, I gotta admit that this argument does seem logical, but it actually doesn't have a lot of evidence to back it. If you look at this chart, you'll see several historical Fed pivots shown along with stock market prices. You'll see that the Fed pivots always preceded big drops in the market. So it's actually more likely that the Fed lowering rates will actually crash the markets first, and if that's the case, then it's not time to buy until after that happens. Now, my next point is that the Bitcoin Spot ETFs that everyone is so hyped about may not be as bullish as you think. In the past week, we already got a major pump for Bitcoin, bringing it all the way to the mid 30,000s. So that begs the question, is the ETF already priced in? Like if Bitcoin was still under 30K, then sure, maybe we get a big candle from the actual approval. But at this point, it really looks like it could be priced in. We all know the ETF is coming after all, so it's not like it's going to surprise anyone. And also, another argument here is that the ETF approval could actually cause a big dump instead. The reason why has to do with Grayscale's GBTC trust finally getting converted into a spot ETF. So I don't want to go too deep here, but the gist is that Grayscale's trust was set up in a way where GBTC holders could not redeem the underlying Bitcoin to sell. That's why during this entire bear market, the GBTC shares traded at a heavy discount to the underlying Bitcoin because there was no arbitrage mechanism available. But now Grayscale won its case against the SEC, so they should be able to convert it into a spot ETF soon, at which point the 650,000 BTC locked up in it can finally be withdrawn and sold. You can imagine that some people are going to sell to lock in profits, right? And depending on how many of those 650,000 get sold, well, it could cause anything from a small drop to a massive crash for the price of Bitcoin. But wait, there's more. Because the thesis that the Bitcoin ETF will have a similar impact on Bitcoin that the gold ETF had on gold may be flat out wrong. If we look at all the other commodity and precious metal ETFs in history, we see that not all of them performed as well as gold's did. Some did okay, but perhaps there's more complex forces involved, and it's not as simple as saying that ETF approval equals rocket ship for the underlying asset. Now, I just pumped the brakes on the ETF hype, but now I'm gonna pump the brakes on the halving hype too. Because first of all, the cardinal rule of statistics is that we need a lot of data points to establish a trend. But this theory that the halving causes pumps only has 3 data points to support it so far, which is wholly inefficient for concluding that there's a trend. But besides that, there's another, more fundamental reason as to why the halving may not cause a pump. And that's the fact that the halving's impact decreases significantly every time. So yes, there is a supply shock that comes with every halving, like the miners get their rewards cut in half. But the relative rate is way different because the first halving brought rewards down from 50 BTC to 25 BTC, while this halving will bring the rate down from 6.25 BTC to a little over 3. And keep in mind that back then, there was way less circulating supply compared to today, so the effect isn't going to be that big, and any supply shock will likely be smoothed out. Anyways, my next major reason to potentially not buy is that some regulators are still trying to bring down the ban hammer against Bitcoin and crypto. In the US, we have the Restrict Act being considered, which could give the government the power to censor Bitcoin transactions in the name of national security. We also still have the same crypto-hating administration run by Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. Remember, Warren hates crypto, and the rumor is that Biden is letting her run his economic policy in return for her support. So perhaps that explains why all those bipartisan crypto bills, heck, even the stablecoin bill, which should be non-controversial, are struggling to get passed. So yeah, as you can see, the regulatory battles are far from over in the US, and like it or not, Bitcoin needs the massive amount of capital and liquidity that the US has in order to truly kick off a new bull market. Phew, that was a lot of arguments for both sides, huh? But to be honest, I've already been dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin all along. And if I had any dry powder left, I'd certainly smash a lot of it in right now. After all, while there are some things to be worried about, the pros far outweigh the cons. But yeah, if you like this type of pros and cons video, then be sure to watch the other time to buy videos on our channel. Otherwise, go check out the Heatbit Mini device and get a discount by using my link below.